Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
Is the government still considering salary increases for MPs? We have that story straight ahead.
The Progressive Liberal Party continues to blast the Minnis administration over the proposed VAT hike.
The Christian Council president applauding government's new move to heavily tax web shops.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, a private aircraft with 3 Americans on board crashed in Rock Sound, Eleuthera this afternoon. There are believed to be no survivors. Head of the Air Accident Investigation Unit, Delvin Major, telling our news authorities were alerted to the crash shortly after 4 p.m. He says the Cessna 421 aircraft, which was bound for the United States, went down in a wooded area shortly after takeoff. Major could not provide details on the condition of the aircraft, noting that rescue teams comprising police officials on the island were having some difficulty accessing the crash site. A team from the Air Accident Investigation Department will be deployed to Rock Sound tomorrow morning. Our news will continue to follow this developing story. Well, a primary school student was killed early this morning as he left home to head to school. Our Jared Higgs was there as police secured the scene and has the details. Jared?
That's right, Christina. Police say it was just after 7 o'clock when 2 men were conducting a drug deal in this very vicinity. That's when they say things went wrong. One of the men produced a firearm, firing at the other one. All the while, a little boy was coming out of this home. He got struck by a bullet. He's no more than 7 years old and waiting for a ride to school.
The child was transported to a locked-down Princess Margaret Hospital, where he died shortly after arrival. Family members say the young victim is second-grade Columbus primary student Cameron Cooper. Our news understands he was only 6 years old. The shooting, which took place on Piper Lane off Palm Beach Street, was the second in the area in less than 12 hours. Police are looking for 32-year-old Johnny St. Luke of Wilson Track in reference to their investigation. Assistant Commissioner of Police with responsibility for crime, Clayton Fernander, made a strong appeal for information from the public, as well as the residents living in the yard where the incident took place.
He should not be this culprit, this coward. He should not be out there another hour.
6-year-old Cooper's cousin, who didn't wish to share his identity, says his kids and young Cameron were best friends.
He's in the wrong area at the wrong time, but and we got these the rest of them going thing. They do their drug selling over there. That's what this happened when them kind of things.
As a child sat nearby holding young Cameron's bloody uniform, the youngster's aunt, Bobby Brown, who lived in the same home, said he was a well-behaved child.
It's sad. We didn't know he was maybe this morning would have been the last morning for school, like he was getting ready for school on his normal day. He was no problem child. It's easy to get along with, do what he told and stuff like that. I don't know how we're going to cope with this right now because they just killed somebody across the corner last night and this again this morning. That ain't making no sense, too much of the senseless killing.
Now, this is the classroom where young Cameron Cooper spent his days learning. His classmates and teacher were unable to join the rest of the school for a special assembly as they were receiving counseling all day. The school's principal, Patricia Chisholm, says Cooper was like her own child, and his teacher, Miss Johnson, was taking the loss especially hard.
Somebody's child is our child here at Columbus Primary School, and so to get the news to hear your son was shot, man, you must grieve.
Chisholm says she hopes that the presence of the Governor General for a pre-arranged visit to the school would encourage students to avoid a life of crime in the future.
Instead of someone picking up another gun, they would pick up the Word of God. They would hold someone's hand and say it is a better way.
It won't be business as usual at the school as they prepare to pay tribute to their fallen student later this week.
Now, this incident comes after a man was shot on Homestead Street just after 10 last night. Police say he was transported to hospital where he later succumbed to his injuries. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Jared. Well, in light of proposed tax and fee hikes, which have sparked outrage among Bahamians and the business community, the finance minister telling reporters today the prime minister's plan to increase parliamentarians' pay is now off the table for at least 3 years. Jillian Gray reports.
I want to put the country on notice
recommended a pay raise,
that at the next budget, I will come forth with a pay increase for the members of Parliament.
7 months after Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis put Parliament on notice that members of Parliament would get a pay raise in the next budget, a move supported by many of his ministers, cabinet ministers have now changed their tune on controversial salary increases. In light of major backlash over the Minnis administration's decision to raise the VAT rate to 12%, heavily tax gaming houses, and increase certain fees this summer, Finance Minister Peter Turnquest says government is no longer considering raises for MPs.
There's no consideration in this budget for any increases in any parliamentary salary or allowances.
Minnis had been heavily criticized last year for even considering a pay raise, considering that in 2014 he had strongly condemned a recommended salary hike put forth by a select House committee when the FNM was in opposition. Outside Cabinet today, the Finance Minister said MPs are years away from a pay increase.
There is no plans in the next 3 years forecast for any increases in parliamentary salaries or allowances.
When the proposed increase was presented last November, several FNM MPs applauded the move, including MP for Bain and Grantstown Travis Robinson, who said the $28,000 a year salary they currently receive can be compared to that of janitorial salaries. The new MP suggested that about $60,000 to $70,000 a year would be a better salary. However, ministers now seem to be falling in line with the government's move to hold off on salary increases.
Well, the government has already made a judgment. My thoughts are not important at this time. I mean, the Prime Minister spoke for all of us.
So, yes or no, do you think that...
I couldn't have an opinion because my party and my government have spoken for me already.
I think until there is a substantial increase in terms of economic activity, I think that MPs' salaries should remain what they are.
Now, the Deputy Prime Minister said MPs' salaries and allowances will not be increased for at least 3 years. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
The Progressive Liberal Party is again slamming the Minnis administration over its decision to nearly double the value-added tax rate come July 1st. During his monthly press briefing today, Davis insisted the PLP has no intention of increasing VAT, as Davis said the former Christie administration had the plans in place to pay the country's bills. Jasmine Brown has that. Jasmine?
That's right, Christina. Davis spent much of today's press conference blasting the Minnis administration over that VAT hike and insisting the former administration had no intention of going above that 7.5% VAT.
We were satisfied that the VAT revenue at 7.5%, coupled with our revenue enhancement measures and a pro-growth economic strategy, we thought that was sufficient.
Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquest announced in Parliament last week that the government intends to increase VAT from 7.5% to 12% on July 1st. The move has been met with intense pushback, but Turnquest has gone on record insisting the increase is necessary to pay off arrears as part of the 3-year fiscal consolidation plan. However, PLP Deputy Leader Chester Cooper sees it much differently as he accused the FNM of mismanaging the country.
The outrage that you are seeing is a testament to the piss-poor job that this government has done in terms of consulting with the business community and consulting with its stakeholders.
Meantime, Davis accused the FNM administration of only adding to the financial woes of the country by not going after up to $600 million in uncollected revenue. He says the PLP had started the process by establishing the Revenue Enhancement Unit.
This unit within the Ministry of Finance was collecting $25 million to $30 million per month up to May of 2017. And their work was being commended by international credit rating agencies. It is not true to say that the unit was floundering. It floundered after May 2017.
The PLP leader also called the VAT hike a mistake and insisted it could thrust the country into what he called a double-dip recession. When asked if a PLP government would reduce the VAT rate if it wins the next general election, Davis said this.
I don't know what state this country is going to be in when we take over. I'm not going to make any promises because what I'm saying now, I don't know where they are carrying this country. Right? I will continue to monitor what is going on, and I will be, if elections held next year or right now, I could say we have sufficient time to fix it.
Now, in addition to hitting out at the government over a value-added tax, Davis said overall the Deputy Prime Minister's communication last week was weak. As he says, the PLP will continue to hold the F&M's feet to the fire as the budget debate continues over the next month. Reporting from PLP headquarters for our news, I'm Jasmine Brown. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Jasmine. Well, Bahamas Christian Council President Delton Fernander applauding government's move to impose heavy taxes on web shops. This comes as those web shop operators prepare to take legal action against the government. Kyle Joaquin tells us more.
Well, Christina, in speaking with the Christian Council president, he said the church's position on web shops has not changed. And he says the government's new move of heavily taxing the industry appears to be a step in the right direction.
I believe that the government has made a bold step.
And with that bold step, the Christian Council president says he's going to watch this one play out as government prepares to hike the fees and taxes for gaming houses to as high as 50%. Some web shop bosses like FML CEO Craig Flowers fear government has signed a death warrant for the industry and that operators may be forced back underground. The Christian Council president says if the new sliding scale tax means web shops near churches and schools would eventually close down, good.
If it is true what the gaming industry has said, it will stop the proliferation. And I will let that weigh out in the courts and weigh out with a battle between government and the industry. If we are to take them at their word, it will retard the proliferation of this industry predominantly in inner city. And that should say something to us as a society at large. Whether it's taxation or whether it's gambling, it's off the back of the poor. It's taking the last dollar, or in this case $1.12, from the poor people over the hill.
Fernando said while he knows a lot of the money gained from this increase in taxation for web shops will go toward decreasing the government's debt, he doesn't want it all to be thrown into one big account like other taxes with no clear explanation. Instead, he'd like to see the funds used to fight social ills derived from gaming and even alcohol.
The church, we are definitely in a position where we say this is moving to the better good of our country. That if these fundings are not just going in the consolidated fund to be lost forever, but fighting some of the negative outflows that we've seen.
But the government shouldn't get too excited about having the church's support. As Fernando said, the church is still against a national lottery, something the finance minister hinted last Friday could become a possibility.
We still know. We still know in lottery in all forms. But let me say this to you. If you look at what has been done, maybe they've already entered into a national lottery. If they are 50% owner through taxation, maybe they've achieved that goal without doing legislation.
The Gaming House Operators Association has given government a week to respond to them or the matter is being taken to the Supreme Court. For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
And Father's Day came early for one 64-year-old father of 10 last week after he met the 42-year-old daughter he never knew he had. As Vonique Tu tells us, it all started with a simple search on a popular ancestry website.
In 1974, a 19-year-old Bahamian drummer met a 16-year-old American girl in a rehearsal hall in Jamaica, Queens. 42 years, countless conversations, and one DNA test later, that drummer, Joseph Kinky Fox, met his long-lost daughter.
That's a big one. Look at you. Okay, I have the drive, so I can't come up, but I will look around.
An emotional moment at Lynden Pinling International Airport as 64-year-old Joe Fox embraced his 42-year-old daughter, Pamela Chandler, for the first time.
Hey, sweetie! This is my new daughter, Pam. Say hi, Pam. I This is my granddaughter.
Fox, a former band leader, had no idea Pamela existed until March, when she sent him a message asking if he knew her father. Pamela, who had a rough upbringing in Boston, went her entire life without a father figure. So in February, she took a chance on Ancestry.com in hopes of learning anything about her heritage.
I logged in, and then there were like 300 relatives who I was related to, cousins. And the second cousins and the third cousins were all connected to the Bahamas.
Those distant cousins gave Chandler the contacts of a Bahamian legal consultant named Joseph. Fox says at first he was annoyed, but replied asking her father's name.
She sent a message back saying, all I know is my father is from an island. He's a drummer. He was in a band. And the last thing she read, she says, and he goes by the nickname or the band name, Kinky. So when she sent me that message, I know I was locked. I know it was over with. I mean, there was no getting out of that because I was in New York. I remember, I didn't remember the time, but I know what I was back in the day.
Fox, who became a father at age 16, admits he had a few casual encounters back in the 70s when he toured the U.S. with his band Foxfire. But he felt guilty because he didn't remember his tryst with Chandler's young mother.
She was in a relationship, but then when I was born, she didn't know who the father was until I was born because I am very, very light, whereas everyone else is very, very dark. So, I always say I came out telling the truth.
So did she know anything about your biological father?
No, she didn't.
His name, where he was from?
She just knew, like I said, her story was he was from some island and he was a drummer. That was it.
She didn't even know his name?
She knew his band name, which was Kinky.
After that, Chandler and Fox spoke for hours every single day for a month. Then they decided to take a DNA test.
And then the results, we got it back, and it felt like the TV show, right?
Yeah.
99.99996. So it was a big relief at that point because there were no more questions.
Chandler, a pregnant mother of one, says the minute her daughter's school closed for summer, they hopped on a Bahamas-bound flight to meet the family they never knew they had. Sitting in the living room of Fox's Rocky Pine Road home, Chandler said calling Fox dad came natural.
My mother never remarried or anything, and I never called anyone else dad. I never had a father figure. It just was what it was. So it's pretty exciting to now find him, know him, love him.
When she was coming, it wasn't like I was expecting a stranger to come. I was expecting my daughter.
We asked Fox's wife of 25 years, Nelda, what was her reaction to learning her husband had another child. She says the $1 million question for her was Pamela's age.
Like when they first told me on the phone, after the third, like, you hear me? And I said, yeah, I heard you. How old is she? Because I'm thinking this child.
She better not.
I'm be under 20. I'm trying to be very nice, a nice wife here, and I'm trying to but just don't say the wrong age.
Fox, who is 9 years older than her stepdaughter, says it has been a joy having Chandler and her daughter Anika in their home for the past week. Chandler, who is a children's author and international teacher, now heads to Dubai for 2 years. However, she's leaving a piece of her heart here in the Bahamas.
It's just exciting to have another grandmother, a grandfather.
Asked if he has any other children he doesn't know about, Fox says he honestly doesn't know. Reporting for our news, I'm Vonique Tude.
Still to come on our news, will trucks be banned from future Labor Day parades? Plus, the deadline looms for residents of unregulated shanty towns to move out. The details and more coming up when our news returns.